Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
It's 8:07 on the Morning Majority, and we have with us a real cheesehead, a Wisconsinite, my friend from the Weekly Standard, John McCormack. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, Mary Catherine. How are you?
Thanks for getting up early. Much appreciated.
Are you from the best western of Madison, Wisconsin?
Nice. Well, at least it's not the Rockford, Illinois hotel. Where were they?
Yeah, they were hiding out. I think it was somewhere in Illinois, Rockford maybe. It was, an undisclosed location.
All right, so tell me the down low on this. Good news for Republicans, clearly. How good?
I would say very good. I mean, you had 6 swing districts that were up for grabs yesterday. They'd all voted for Obama in 2008, and they'd all voted for Scott Walker in 2010. Democrats ended up picking up just 2. One of those actually voted very strongly for Obama, gave him 60% in 2008, and the other one involved a Republican senator who had left the district to go live with his 25-year-old mistress, and he ended up losing by about 2 points.
Wow.
The other Republicans, 4 other Republicans, held on by various winning margins. Again, these were all swing districts. I think that's a really big blow to the unions. They threw everything that they had at these Republican districts. They outspent the other side 2-1. They spent tens of millions of dollars. That's just unprecedented for a handful of state Senate districts.
Were the unions and activists on the ground on the left feeling pretty good yesterday? Because yesterday I was reading sort of my Facebook feed and my Twitter and thinking the enthusiasm really seems to be with them.
Yeah, I think that they thought they were going to win. Their polling, the Democratic polling going in, showed them winning 3 seats, and at least. And then they were just behind, on the verge. They had the momentum on their side. They could win 4 or 5 even, is the way that they were telling it all week. I mean, the Democratic chairman of the state party was predicting basically victory a week ago, boasting that they were ahead in their internal polling and just on their heels in the other 3. And they came up short. I mean, when you throw everything you have at a race like this and come up short, I mean, that just really got to hurt.
Do I have this right? Because it was my sense when all this was going on and it first started that the Democrats they looked around and there were several states where similar things were going on, huge cutbacks in other states, but they chose Wisconsin because they thought that was the state where they had the best chance of fighting and making a statement and winning.
I think that's right, and I think that they might have had a backlash, actually. I mean, if you look at the polls, Scott Walker is actually doing significantly better than John Kasich in Ohio or Rick Scott in Florida. Those are 2 other Republican governors with Republican legislators that have pushed through bold conservative reforms. And so why is Walker doing better? I mean, Wisconsin isn't more Republican than those states. It does have a little better of an unemployment rate, but I think at least my personal take is that there may have been some real backlash against the unions. People in Wisconsin, you've heard of Minnesota nice. I think people in Wisconsin think that they're nicer than people in Minnesota.
Yeah, they don't like that stuff.
When they see people chanting down the governor at the state fair, yelling shame, 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 I mean, that people don't act like that around here. And I think that there's been some real I think the unions may have busted themselves, basically.
So the larger ramifications would be this: if that was the best they got, if that was everything they had, then maybe this is sort of a sign that that 2012 will not go the way the Democrats hoped it would go.
Yeah, in Wisconsin, I would say that what it shows is that Wisconsin is still a 50-50 state, which is actually good news for Republicans. I mean, Scott Walker only won with 52% of the vote.
Right.
So I don't think it's a sure thing that he, a challenge from Russ Feingold will still be a very serious thing out here. I think anyone else he beats easily. I think a Russ Feingold challenge, it's really down to the wire. He really could end up losing that in 2012 if they decide to go forward. And in terms of other states, I don't know how predictive Wisconsin is for other states, but definitely in terms of Wisconsin, I think it shows that Republicans have really beaten back a huge challenge from the Democrats and the unions and the left.
Has there been enough time to see the effects of Scott Walker's policies in Wisconsin? I mean, do we have any idea of how things are going in the state economically?
Yes. Very much so. I mean, the numbers are just coming out, but if you go school district to school district, I mean, they're all balancing their budgets. Some are coming in with surpluses from creating these very modest changes. And these were changes that they could only implement because they had limited collective bargaining rights. That was the means to the end. And you're seeing some school districts are cutting taxes because they're saving so much money. Others are lowering class sizes. Others are offering up new language courses and advanced placement courses. I mean, and this news is just starting to trickle in. So my theory is that maybe as time goes on, this bill is only going to become more popular. Today there was just an editorial in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel talking about how the sky isn't falling, and Scott Walker deserves some credit. I guess you'll notice that they waited until the day after the election to publish that. But better late than never.
What do next Tuesday's races look like, and how hard are those districts? That'll be 2 Democrats who are up for recall. What do those districts look like for Republicans?
Okay, well, there's 2 Democrats up next Tuesday, just based on a scheduling quirk. So one district is a guy named Jim Holper, and he is in a Republican-leaning district. I think Bush won it by about 6 points. He's actually ahead in the polls by roughly that amount. He's facing somewhat of a rough around the edges Tea Partier who has some unfortunate statements about Democrats being really terrible people, and so I think that he might pull it out. But I think that there's a decent chance that Republicans could still win there. The other district is a more Democratic district near Milwaukee, and once the redistricting goes through, this district's going to become much, much more Democratic. So even if Republicans could pull off a win there, it would be a short-lived victory and not really worth that much.
Has Scott Walker commented yet about the election last night?
Yeah, he issued a statement last night, and it was a pretty reserved statement about how he wants to work together with both parties. Walker has played his hand very well, I think, throughout all this. He's known how to take a punch, and the unions don't, I guess. So he played it very smartly and just issued this bipartisan statement of bipartisan hope to work together and create jobs. So very smart. No end zone dance from Scott Walker.
Yeah, I keep hearing about Darling. Why was she the big name last night?
Yeah, I mean, the vote came down there. It was later. She wasn't actually the closest race. That was Olson. He won with 52% of the vote, and Darling won with 54%. The Democrats had played this up, calling it the crown jewel of all the races. They thought that they had a really good chance there. She won just barely won in 2008 with 50.5% of the vote. So I think the Democrats thought they had a real good chance there. She has some of Milwaukee County in her district, and then some more conservative parts in her district as well. And the conservative parts, I guess, won out, as we see.
Well, have you seen the newspaper this morning? I'm just curious what the headlines are, whether they say it's a victory for Republicans or Democrats because they won 2 seats, if they're saying...
let's see. I haven't seen the Wisconsin papers yet. The New York Times acknowledged that it was a victory for...
Although I noticed they led with 2 Democrats got new seats, but they added the loss at the end of that sentence.
Yeah. So the New York Times, they acknowledged ultimately it was a loss for Democrats. It could have been much worse for Republicans. So I haven't quite seen the print copies of any of the papers.
I saw some of the websites in Wisconsin, and they were playing it that way. Democrats take 2 seats, but failed to take the Senate.
All right, John, great to have you on the program. We thank you for your time getting up early.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, John.
John McCormack, staff writer, Weekly Standard in Madison this morning, where there's no doubt it was a big victory for Republicans. They won 4 of the 6 recall elections, they needed to hold on to 4 in order to maintain the majority. And then there are two elections again next week where there are Democrats who are the incumbents there, so the Republicans could go back to what the spread they had before.